The phone rang at midnight. Frank Sinatra almost didn't answer. He'd been drinking, trying to forget another difficult day. But something made him pick up. On the other end was a voice he knew well. Slurred, scared, desperate. Marilyn Monroe. 12 hours later, she'd be dead. August 4th, 1962. Los Angeles. Frank Sinatra was at his compound in Palm Springs, trying to relax. It had been a brutal year. His friendship with the Kennedys was over. The mob was angry with him. His personal life was a mess. He just wanted peace. Then the phone rang. "Frank? It's me." Marilyn's voice was thick, hard to understand. She'd been drinking or taking pills, maybe both. "Marilyn? What's wrong?" "It's late. I needed to talk to someone. I can't sleep. I keep thinking about things." Frank sat up. He'd known Marilyn for years. They'd been friends, maybe more at times, depending on who you asked. But Frank knew Marilyn well enough to recognize when she was in trouble. And right now, she was in serious trouble. "What kind of things?" "Everything. The past few months. The things I know. The things they told me not to talk about." Frank's stomach tightened. He knew exactly what she meant. Marilyn Monroe had been romantically involved with both John F. Kennedy and his brother Bobby. She'd been to parties where powerful men discussed secrets. She'd seen things, heard things, and now those men wanted her to disappear. "Marilyn, are you safe right now?" "Where are you?" "I'm home. Alone. My housekeeper left. I sent her away. I wanted to be alone. That was a mistake. You shouldn't be alone right now." Marilyn laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "When am I not alone, Frank?" "I'm always alone." To understand why Marilyn called Frank that night, you need to understand their relationship. They'd met in the early 1950s, when both were rising stars. Frank was already famous, but Marilyn was just starting. They hit it off immediately. Frank saw something in Marilyn that most people missed. Everyone else saw the blonde bombshell, the sex symbol, the dumb blonde character she played in movies. But Frank saw the intelligence, the ambition, the vulnerability underneath. He respected her. They had a brief affair in 1954, right after Frank's divorce from Ava Gardner. It didn't last long. Both of them were too damaged, too needy. But they remained friends. Real friends. The kind who call each other at 3 a.m. when life gets too hard. By 1962, Marilyn's life was falling apart. Her movie career was struggling. She'd been fired from her last film for being unreliable. Her marriages had failed. And worst of all, she'd gotten involved with the Kennedy brothers. It started with JFK. They met at a party in 1961. The President of the United States and the most famous actress in the world. It was inevitable they'd be drawn to each other. They had a brief affair. Marilyn thought it meant something. JFK thought it was fun. When JFK got bored, he passed Marilyn to his brother Bobby. The Attorney General continued the relationship. But Bobby was married too, and he had no intention of leaving his wife. Marilyn was just a distraction. But Marilyn didn't see it that way. She thought Bobby loved her. She thought they'd be together. She started calling Bobby at the Justice Department. She showed up at his office. She talked about their future together. Bobby panicked. This wasn't supposed to happen. Marilyn was supposed to be discreet. Instead, she was becoming a liability. A scandal waiting to happen. The president's former mistress, now involved with the Attorney General? The press would destroy them. So Bobby cut her off. No more calls. No more visits. No more promises. Marilyn was devastated. She'd been used and discarded by the two most powerful men in America. That's when things got dangerous. Because Marilyn knew things. She'd been at parties where JFK and Bobby discussed classified information. She'd heard conversations about Cuba, about the mob, about secrets that could bring down the administration. And Marilyn, hurt and angry, started talking. Not to the press. Not yet. But to friends. To her therapist. To people who might listen. Word got back to the Kennedys. This was a problem. Frank Sinatra knew all of this. He'd been the one who introduced Marilyn to the Kennedy circle. It was at Frank's house in Palm Springs where Marilyn first met JFK. Frank felt guilty about that now. On the phone, Marilyn kept talking. Her words were jumbled, hard to follow, but Frank understood the fear underneath. They want me to disappear, Frank, not literally, but they want me to shut up, go away, stop existing. Who wants that? You know who? The people in Washington. The people who used to call me all the time and now won't take my calls. Marilyn, you need to be careful what you say, even on the phone. Why? Are they listening? Marilyn laughed again, that hollow sound. Let them listen. I don't care anymore. What are they going to do? Kill me? Frank felt a chill. Don't say things like that. Why not? It's true, isn't it? I know too much. I'm a problem. Problems get solved. You're not a problem. You're Marilyn Monroe. You're untouchable. Nobody's untouchable, Frank. You should know that better than anyone. She was right. Frank did know that. He'd learned it the hard way with Sam Giancana and the mob. Marilyn continued talking, her voice getting quieter, more tired. I kept a diary, wrote down everything, all the conversations, all the secrets. I thought maybe it would protect me. If they knew I had evidence, they'd leave me alone. Frank's blood ran cold. Marilyn, tell me you didn't. I did. It's all written down. Everything Bobby told me about Cuba, about the mob connections, about the plans. All of it. Where is this diary? Safe. Hidden. But people know it exists. That's the point. Marilyn, that doesn't make you safe. That makes you more dangerous to them. There was silence on the other end. Then Marilyn spoke, and for the first time, Frank heard real fear in her voice. What should I do, Frank? Frank thought carefully. He knew how these things worked. Marilyn had put herself in an impossible position. The diary made her a threat. But destroying it wouldn't help now. The damage was done. You need to leave Los Angeles. Tonight, go somewhere quiet. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Just disappear for a while until things cool down. I'm tired of running, Frank. Then you need to talk to a lawyer. A good one. Someone who can protect you. Lawyers can't protect me from them. Frank didn't know what to say to that. She was probably right. They talked for a few more minutes. Marilyn's speech was getting more slurred. She was fading. Frank could hear her taking pills, washing them down with something. Marilyn, how many pills have you taken tonight? I don't know. A few. I can't sleep otherwise. You need to stop. You need to call your doctor. I don't want a doctor. I want to sleep. I want to stop thinking. Frank felt helpless. He was in Palm Springs. Marilyn was in Brentwood, an hour and a half away. He thought about driving there, but something stopped him. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he thought Marilyn would be fine. Maybe he just didn't want to get more involved. He'd regret that decision for the rest of his life. Listen, Marilyn, I need you to promise me something. Promise me you'll call your housekeeper back. Don't stay alone tonight. Okay, Frank, I promise. And promise me you'll see someone tomorrow. A lawyer, a therapist, someone you trust. I promise. Thank you for listening, Frank. You're one of the few people who actually cares. Of course I care. You're going to be okay, Marilyn. This will pass. It always does. Maybe, or maybe this is how it ends. Don't talk like that. I'm just being realistic. But thank you, Frank, for everything, for being kind. Call me tomorrow, okay? Let me know you're all right. I will. Good night, Frank. Good night, Marilyn. The line went dead. Frank sat there holding the phone for a long time. Something felt wrong. He almost called her back. Almost got in his car and drove to Brentwood. Almost did something. But he didn't. He poured another drink and went to bed. It was the last time he'd ever speak to Marilyn Monroe. The next morning, August 5th, 1962, Frank was woken by a phone call. It was a friend from Los Angeles. Frank, have you heard? Heard what? Marilyn Monroe is dead. They found her this morning in her bedroom. Overdose. Frank dropped the phone. He couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. He'd just talked to her. She was fine. She promised to call him today. He picked up the phone again. What happened? They're saying suicide. Pills. She'd been depressed. Everyone knew that. But Frank knew it wasn't that simple. Marilyn had been scared. She'd talked about people wanting her to disappear, and now she was gone. Frank called everyone he could think of, trying to get details, trying to understand. The official story came together quickly, too quickly. Marilyn had taken an overdose of barbiturates. She'd been found by her housekeeper. The police ruled it a probable suicide. But there were problems with the story. The timeline didn't make sense. Marilyn's body was found in a position that suggested she'd been moved. The pill bottles were arranged too neatly. There were no drinking glasses in the bedroom, but Marilyn would have needed water to swallow that many pills. And then there was the diary, the one Marilyn had told Frank about, the one with all the secrets. It was gone, vanished, along with other personal documents. Frank wanted to tell someone what Marilyn had said to him, but who could he tell? The police? They'd already made up their minds. The FBI? They were probably the ones who wanted Marilyn silenced. The press? That would just make him a target too. So Frank stayed quiet. He went to Marilyn's funeral on August 8th. It was small, just a few dozen people. None of the Kennedys attended. Neither did most of Marilyn's Hollywood friends. They were too afraid of the association. Frank stood in the back, wearing dark glasses, trying not to cry. He kept thinking about that phone call, about Marilyn's voice, about how scared she'd sounded, about how he'd promised her everything would be okay. After the funeral, reporters tried to talk to Frank. He refused to comment. What could he say? That Marilyn had called him hours before her death? That she'd talked about being in danger? That she'd kept a diary of government secrets? He'd be dead within a week. The official investigation concluded quickly. Probable suicide. Case closed. But alternative theories started immediately. Conspiracy theorists suggested Marilyn had been murdered. Some blamed the Kennedys. Some blamed the mob. Some blamed the CIA. Frank heard all the theories. He had his own opinions, but he kept them private. Years later, a close friend asked Frank directly, "Do you think Marilyn killed herself?" Frank thought for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "I think Marilyn knew too much. And people who know too much don't usually die of natural causes. Did someone kill her?" Frank shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe. Maybe they just made sure she had access to the pills and let nature take its course. Maybe they knew she was depressed and unstable and just waited for the inevitable. Does it matter? She's still dead." In the 1970s, Marilyn's death was reinvestigated. New evidence suggested that the official story was incomplete at best, fabricated at worst. Witnesses who'd been ignored in 1962 came forward. Timeline discrepancies were noted, but nothing was ever proven. The case remained officially a probable suicide. Frank gave one interview about Marilyn in 1983. The interviewer asked him about their friendship. Marilyn was special, Frank said, not because she was beautiful, though she was, not because she was talented, though she was that too. She was special because she was genuine. In a town full of phonies, Marilyn was real, and it killed her. Do you think about her often? Every day. I think about that last phone call. I think about what I should have done differently. What would you have done differently? I would have gotten in my car and driven to her house. I would have stayed with her. I would have made sure she wasn't alone. Maybe that wouldn't have changed anything. Maybe she was already doomed. But at least I would have tried. Do you feel responsible? Frank's eyes filled with tears. Of course I do. She called me for help, and I went to bed instead. How am I supposed to live with that? The interviewer moved on other questions, but Frank's mind stayed with Marilyn. For the rest of the interview, he seemed distant, distracted, remembering. Frank Sinatra died in 1998. Among his personal effects was a photograph of Marilyn Monroe. On the back, in Frank's handwriting, were the words, "I'm sorry I couldn't save you." That's the true story of Marilyn Monroe's last phone call. A desperate woman reaching out to one of the few people she trusted, a friend who listened but didn't act, and a tragedy that could have been prevented if someone had just paid attention. Was Marilyn murdered, or did she kill herself? The truth probably lies somewhere in between. She was a woman in pain, surrounded by dangerous people who knew secrets that powerful men wanted buried. Whether someone actively killed her or just created a condition for her death doesn't really matter. Marilyn Monroe died alone in her bedroom on August 5th, 1962. And Frank Sinatra spent the rest of his life wishing he'd answered that midnight phone call differently, wishing he'd driven to Brentwood, wishing he'd saved her. Some regrets you carry forever. For Frank Sinatra, Marilyn Monroe was one of them. The phone call he couldn't forget, the friend he couldn't save, the secret he kept until his dying day. Because that's what Frank learned from Marilyn's death. Some truths are too dangerous to tell. Some secrets stay buried. And some phone calls change everything, even when you don't realize at the time. Marilyn Monroe's last words to Frank Sinatra were, "Thank you for being kind." Frank thought about those words for 36 years. And every time he did, he wished he'd been kinder still, wished he'd done more, wished he'd saved her. But you can't save someone who knows too much. Not in Hollywood. Not in 1962. Not when the most powerful men in the world want you silenced. That phone rang at midnight. Frank answered. Marilyn talked. And 12 hours later, the biggest star in the world was dead. That's not a coincidence. That's how the game is played. And Frank Sinatra knew it. He just wished he'd admitted it sooner, before it was too late to save Marilyn Monroe.